Welcome to another edition of Peanuts from the Plebs.
Hello.
Post-election.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Episode 22.
Wow.
Who's keeping
I know.
count?
It's crazy. All right.
Sweet.
Well, I guess Joe Biden won, so that's it. So thanks, everybody.
Game's over.
See you next time.
Game over.
Or not. What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't adhere to that because the Electoral College hasn't voted yet. So until they actually vote in December, no one is the elected president. So we shall see.
But AP declared. I mean, and I think it's in Article 2.
Oh, well, that's just like how Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela, right? Because
of course.
Because we just decided that that's how it goes. That's how things are decided now. You know, presidents, that's how they're decided.
You know what gets me is first of all, there's all these stories about, well, AP declared Biden the winner, number one. Like, I mean, AP, right? And
well, they don't actually.
Do you see AP like it as in it's a reputable propaganda rag, or that it's not?
I mean, and then the other thing is that there's like opinion polls saying that how many people think Joe Biden actually won the election. And then they say, well, majority of people, even a majority of Republicans think that Biden won the election. But since, I mean, isn't the election supposed to be the ultimate opinion poll? Why do we have opinion polls about what the election results were, as if that's kind of more authoritative? I mean, I think it indicates that people have their doubts about the election system in general, that you have to have an opinion poll on this official opinion poll, which is the election.
Yeah, for the most part, I just see articles simply call Biden president-elect. They don't even get into the weeds about anything about, that they're just saying that based on AP calling it and so forth. I was chatting with Steve earlier that Daisy, that I was actually surprised that the Boston Globe actually educated their readers a little bit and did actually acknowledge that there's some controversy around it by basically, of course, saying Trump's Hitler or something, but actually saying that, talking about this nonsense where the Republicans are saying that the electors are actually chosen by the state legislatures and that they could actually override the will of the people, all kind of stuff, without saying, of course, with saying there's absolutely zero evidence of any, wrongdoing in the election. So that I thought that was kind of interesting that they actually felt the need to educate their readers on that, like they're thinking this is
semi
yeah, like they just want to let them know that there's something going on that those nasty Republicans are up to, and you're probably going to read more things, about it coming down the pike. But so I thought that was fairly interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that I mean, there's obviously both parties are guilty of the same thing or attempting to do the same thing. I mean, the Democrats did gerrymandering in Maryland and other states to their advantage, and they used to do it in Massachusetts as well. And obviously Republicans, were very proactive after the 2010 census in trying to capture state legislatures so they could redraw the districts in their favor. And I mean, but the Democrats are kind of like, they're more jealous than anything. They wish they could have done the same thing.
Well, just as they were, right, because there's a census is coming up and all that is about to happen again. And the Republicans, supposedly Trump would have no coattails, but this really statistical anomaly happened where the president did really bad, but the Republicans did quite well. Again, it's another statistical anomaly that, the Dems, statistics is one science the Dems do not want to pay attention to or believe in this year.
Well, okay, because I want to touch upon like two things that you guys said. So one was the thing about how they had to take the poll to see how much people are buying into this. And if that doesn't show that this is propaganda, then I don't understand what else would make you think that this is propaganda. Like, why do you need to poll people to see if the information that you're putting out there is actually seeking into people,
Well, I'll give you another reason. I think it's just because there is general doubt about the integrity of the election election process, whether it's questioning the whole process of, the Dominion voting machines, whatever, or if it's just questioning the way it was written in the Constitution with the Electoral College and unfair representation based on the population of your state and the number of senators you have or whatever. So, I mean, you could make the argument that it's just there's a general uneasiness and lack of confidence.
Right, but the thing is that
process.
if you actually let the process do what it's supposed to do, then people will understand. They may not really they may believe that something else is going on or whatever, but you're not going to have a whole, pretty much no one really believes what is going on, which we talked about this beforehand, that's how it was going to be, that no one on either side was going to believe whoever the results we're going to see. But the problem is the fact that these organizations, these media organizations, have taken it upon themselves to declare that someone is the winner even before all of the results have come in. And even though there is this this controversy, even like the fact that Trump, he actually did an address, and that they pulled away from him. They actually stopped showing his address because he was telling lies about the election. Dude, that is not okay.
Oh, that's happened like supposedly on broadcasts on like Fox News and stuff like that. Even on Fox News, they've pulled away from people who are talking about.
But the president of the United States is a different story.
Yeah, well,
you don't do that to the president of the United States.
Absolutely true. Yeah, crazy.
That's setting a massive precedent. That's telling you we are only going to let you see what we want you to see, what is okay for our narrative. Anything that pushes away from that, and we've already seen that with all the media censorship that's going on. This is all, connected.
But why do they have to push this propaganda narrative? Obviously, because there's doubts about the system or whatever. But I mean, you still go out there on the street or talk to friends. Wait, can I finish? Can I finish, Daisy? Can I finish what I'm saying? Okay, if I talk to people that I know, most people are like, the results of the election are unquestionable, that Biden won, right? So I don't think, I think if you polled most people, I mean, like they did, I mean, most people think that Biden won. And the thing is that there is a level of doubt there, but it's not a majority. And when you say that most people doubt the results of the election on both sides, I don't agree with that. I think most people think that Biden won the election.
Yeah, anecdotally,
I would argue that.
Anecdotally, my friends that aren't obsessed with politics, they just think that Biden won, Trump is being a poor loser, and that's it. If I try to broach any subject like, would you realize that it's kind of unprecedented for all these states to stop counting before the counting was completed? And Trump was up in had a lead in all these states. And then miraculously, when they resumed counting at 4 or 5 a.m., immediately Biden, the thing started flipping Biden's way. Do you understand what a statistical anomaly that is, and what an unprecedented method of taking in the nation's votes that is? And they'll just blank.
Well, I mean, the argument is that the mail-in ballots came in after the day of voting, so that's why the mail-in ballots were predominantly Democratic.
No, we should watch. Well,
that's the argument.
Yeah. But the idea is like that they're also. I mean, they're coming in from all different precincts at once, right? So you're not talking about. You're not talking about something where there should be an anomaly of all of a sudden a big swing in one direction or the other, or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
you're not talking about this one precinct suddenly you're counting as far as the mail-in goes. You're talking about they're all coming in at once. I mean, I'm not going to do a great job in this. I mean, Fiorella and Pasta, who combo coach, have paid attention to election integrity for years, did a really good thing about how what happened in the Trump vote count is exactly what happened in the primaries with Bernie. That essentially,
well, I mean, we know
when he was ahead at a certain point, all of a sudden a statistically crazy event started happening on the way the percentages swung the other way. For every 1,000 votes, suddenly now it was 70% Biden instead of the 30%. It just completely swung the opposite direction.
Right. Right. I mean, but you can't prove that the current election was due to fraud. I mean, but it seems like what you can prove, I think, is a lack of confidence that has increased. Anyways, the lack of confidence that has
Statistics is a
increased over
science.
time.
Yeah.
Whether
Statistics.
it's whether it's just a plurality or a majority.
Yeah.
I think that's a plurality at this point. I don't think a majority of people question the process. They don't really think about it. They if they vote, they go and vote, and that's it, right? But I think there is obviously there is an increased level of skepticism vis-a-vis the election system, and that's why you have to have these polls and whatever to quote unquote prove that people still have confidence in it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to finish up by saying that, statistics is a science, and, climate change is still, it's a range of possibilities percentage wise of what could happen in the future. It's obvious. It's the highest probability are these bad things happening. And that's why the scientists completely agree on it. Well, the statistics in this case are of a very extremely high probability that there's some other factor introduced other than normal legal voting for these numbers to work the way they did.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would just to play the other side. I would say the argument is that that mostly it was from cities because people didn't want to have to wait in long lines, and risk exposure or whatever. So they would do mail-in ballots predominantly from cities, which tend to be predominantly be Democratic, and that also, like some of my family members who are Trump supporters, they were basically said they're going to vote in person because that's what they were told to do. So there is going to be you can make the argument that even though the results seem skewed, that it was because of a predominance of one. That doesn't prove there's no corruption at all. It doesn't prove anything.
I thought I had read that they actually were finding that in states where they were able to count those mail-in ballots early, they were surprised that Republicans were sending in early because they were so motivated to vote, that they actually were voting by mail at a much higher rate and it kind of canceled out that thinking but that, I don't know if that was across the board everywhere. Obviously there's different election laws applying in different states.
But we could all agree in that there's less confidence in the system and the results, right? I mean, I would argue that going back to decades, if not centuries in the American system, there's been doubt as a result. I mean, look at the 1960 election where, JFK won West Virginia and Illinois basically due to, Joseph Kennedy, his father, meeting with Frank Sinatra and manipulating the votes in the Chicago precincts under Mayor Daley and so that it was a very close election and probably Nixon won in 1960, but people didn't there was no. I mean, there were some people who questioned it, but basically, there wasn't that level of skepticism that there is now.
Yeah. And I can't blame voters for feeling that way, right? Because you've got, like we were saying, Republicans, use the legal method of gerrymandering to make things work for them, which voters would look at that and go, that's crazy. Everything ought to be a big block. You shouldn't be able to wiggle these bizarre districts to make it favor your candidate. And then you've got the Democrats where most people, even if they don't agree that they fixed the primary in 2020, most people understand something funky happened in 2016 because all those emails came out. So, you watch them fix it. You watch them kick the Greens off the ballot in battleground states. I mean, why should anybody have any belief that they wouldn't go that extra step when they're already calling Trump Hitler? Why wouldn't they think they would go the extra step and cheat? It just seems like where's the moral line being crossed there over cheating your own people in the primaries?
Right. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah. It kind of feels like we go around in circles here. I guess that's the biggest point, is that people have a reason to be, to question their institutions. I mean, I think that's the biggest point. And the election system is absolutely something that people are completely sane to question whether or not their vote counts and whether or not the vote tally is accurate.
But then if there is so much skepticism, then why do we even bother to vote? If it's been such a rampant problem for such a long time.
A lot of people don't.
I
Yeah,
know, but that's what I'm
that's
saying. It's
true.
like, why do we even continue to do it if it's
Well,
something where we've already been shown
well,
that what the
Well,
people
because like,
want? So we've seen already that people do not, or that we have these studies that have shown that what the people want is not what ends up coming to fruition, right? Legislation wise. And when it comes, and I mean, obviously, we're supposed to be voting these people in, right? And if our system of electing these people is so corrupt, and we know that it's so corrupt, we know the problems with, money in politics and all this stuff, and we've gotten to the point where even before this election, we knew that people were going to question everything, and people are even questioning not even just this, certain race, but also like local races. Like when you look at I'm sure if you look at Shahid Buttar and Nancy Pelosi's race, I'm sure that there's a lot of fudgery going around there too. So it's a matter of like, so what, why do we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
I mean, why do we get involved with the Tulsi campaign? I mean, what was the point of
Answer
that?
my question first, though.
I mean, I think you hit it on the nail on the head there, Daisy. I mean, first of all, you have to distinguish between the presidential races where you have the gerrymandering, you have the electoral college, you have all these factors in there, versus in that kind of unique system we have of electing a president versus local elections. So, like, if I go and vote, I consider my vote for down ticket as important as the top of the ticket. So like if I vote for somebody on the city council, that's important as well. And so like you can have cases like where you have a socialist elected in the Seattle City Council, right? So I mean, and if you don't vote, then that's like the only avenue, one of the only avenues we have for direct so-called participation in our democracy, in our system. Uh, so it seems like,
But look how you even described that. You said so-called.
yeah,
You know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying? Like there's that cynicism.
hey, I'm pretty cynical, and I'm pretty much,
I know.
I'm
Listen, I struggle with that. I struggle with that, especially like this race. I really think, and like everything that's going on, I'm really thinking about it as like, why do we keep doing this if we know that it's so rampant with fraud and that it's all just like this big show, to keep people entertained and stuff? Like, why do I keep participating in this?
so so my
I'm just like honestly, saying what I've struggled
so
with this time.
yeah, so my perspective, there are things like saying down ballot tickets, and also I was really hoping for frank choice voting, and I'm again horrified at my fellow Massachusetts folks for not supporting that. But I think there's also the belief that for me, I think that if it's not even close, then you're gonna win. Like that situation with Nixon and Kennedy. My understanding is Nixon kind of didn't pursue that because it it was he wasn't going to win the battle. He didn't have overwhelming numbers other places sort of like that, and I don't know. It becomes a matter of like if you win in a big red or blue wave, then the battles don't even happen. You don't even have to fight those little skirmishes. And so I kind of hope that I'll just be part of this huge wave. So I vote hoping that it's not even close, and then the people actually do get what they want.
Yeah, or in my
But
case, I voted for Green Party thinking that, at least it's another, if Green Party gets like,
yeah,
if they get a few percent, then people might start taking notice of them. I mean, end of
there's that
story,
too.
they got
Yeah,
like 0.5%, right, in Massachusetts. But
yeah.
even so, I figured that was my way of making a statement. I figured that's the least I can do is fill out the little stupid form and mail it in. I mean, it didn't take me longer than 5 minutes to do it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get a right to complain.
Then you get a right to complain. But I mean, that's not political participation. I mean, voting every 4 years or even voting every time is really not. That's the bare minimum, and not even really
Well,
the bare minimum. It's you have to do more than that. It's
Right.
how you live your life. It's a lot of different things.
mm,
Right. So that's the question. It's like, I mean, I'm not telling people to not vote, but it's definitely something that I have thought about that I don't know if I want to vote going forward because I feel that, I mean, even beforehand, I knew that really my vote was going to be kind of futile, right?
mm,
Because I voted for Howie Hawkins, and I mean, Howie had such a poor
Right.
showing. I did it for, and it's almost like it's operational, you know, like I'm just okay, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, so I guess I'm
Yeah,
gonna do
yeah.
I
it.
mean,
And
in theory,
it's like that's not what voting is supposed to be for, you know, like
Yeah,
I'm supposed to actually vote because I feel that it's supposed to be my voice, but
yeah.
I don't feel that my voice is really heard.
well, you're supposed to have political parties that represent your interests, right? And people align with these political parties because they figure they're going to further their whatever their, whether it's their personal gain or whether it's their vision for a better society or whatever, they're going to align with a certain political party and vote for that political party. And that political party will get into power and they will enact those policies, right? That's the naive explanation of why people get involved with political parties and why people vote. The real story, of course, is that these political parties have become corrupted. They are become power, self-sustaining power centers that align with different groups that don't necessarily represent popular will in any level, right?
Mhm.
So witness Republican and the Democratic parties seem to have lost touch with the interests of people, and they're more aligned with corporate interests, with the elites, and this gets into the whole populism versus elites dichotomy. But yeah, I mean, people have lost confidence in that idea that you can vote for a party and that they'll get empowered and enact a policy. Now let's contrast that with a strong socialist system like the Soviet system, where basically they said there's no need for parties because parties are just artificial, corrupt constructions, that you really just need a party that's representing the workers, and you just have to make sure that party stays in power. And every time you vote, there's like one list of candidates. You vote for those to show your support for that system. But basically, it's become a bureaucratic elite, but it's supposedly operating in the interests of the workers, and we're furthering that. And to some extent, it seems like we're kind of going towards that because we're kind of going towards an unelected elite, which is making decisions for us rather than having the parties actually representing us. So I just thought that was interesting that 100 years ago, we had a revolution in Russia where they actually uh, implemented kind of thought that the party system didn't really work, and that we had to have this other system. So that's kind of Lenin's approach.
Well, my
What
understanding,
do you guys think of that?
well, my understanding too is that also, our founding fathers didn't believe, and they thought we would have problems if we did form political parties.
Right. They were
really,
against political
yeah,
parties.
they absolutely wanted citizens just to rotate through and take turns, and
Right.
that was it. Um, and that, yeah, that would avoid the corrupting influence of corporations really wielding the power through the politicians.
Yeah, but the problem is that we have given up that power because what we've
Yeah,
done is that we've contracted it out essentially. And that's why the majority of people that are actually like in city council positions or in positions that actually affect you and I, it's people who they have the money or they are retired, or you know what I'm saying? Like they don't have
mm,
to necessarily work. The people, the plebes, don't have the opportunity to be in charge of anything and to have their voices heard because we're too busy working,
right.
and we don't have
Yeah,
that, and we're too busy struggling, trying to survive, trying to make sure
yeah,
that we have enough food to eat or that we have shelter or whatever, and to be worried about what the fuck, X, Y, and Z is doing over there,
yeah.
and to worry about what these people that are in charge, what they're actually doing.
And it's even worse. It's even getting worse, right? Because to keep yourself educated on what's actually happening in the government is getting even harder with the obvious censorship and the obvious propaganda coming out of the mainstream media directly from the government. It's horrific. To address your original point, Steve, though, in a socialist situation, the government representatives don't necessarily represent the workers, though, right? They become kind of this elite administrative class that
Right. But
aren't. It's
they
not the same
represent.
as. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, they represent the ideology, so they're very ideological.
Right.
And I think Marx was onto something, but I also think he was, he believed in this kind of inevitability of progress, from slavery to feudalism to capitalism to socialism to communism, and that was inevitable. And I don't necessarily agree with that. That there's some magical forces that exist, like in physics, like gravity or something. I think uh, I don't, they touted this as being the scientific approach to, human societal development. I don't agree with that, but I think Marx was onto something that, and that's, I mean, in the Soviet system, he had corruption, obviously, with Brezhnev with his, his collection of foreign cars and
Right.
his hunting junkets and all this stuff. I mean, it was corrupt. It wasn't necessarily corrupt in the same level that it's corrupt in the West, where people are
Yeah.
trillionaires essentially, or billionaires, whatever. But I mean, you could make the argument that the focus of the system was on providing for people on a popular level, so that in the Soviet system, and I'm not defending it, I'm just saying that this is a reality, that there was much less disparity of wealth. I mean, and obviously the level of wealth was much lower, but basically there was more equity in terms of you were guaranteed a job, you were guaranteed a place to live. It might not be great. You might be living in an apartment with two other families, but you did have a shelter, a roof over your head, and that was guaranteed. So there was that level. And people who are nostalgic for that Soviet period talk about, the level of security and the absence of stress, because they didn't have to worry about any of these things that you have to worry about in Western society. So there was, I would say, the elites in that system, I mean, by and large, were very ideological and were committed to that system, even though there was corruption as well.
Sure.
Whereas in the West, I see, like, the elites are committed to some kind of like control and, becoming more powerful, and not necessarily anything any better. Put it that way.
I see them at this point. Our leadership simply wants to continue to pull the wool over our eyes and continue to be able to get away with just promising us stuff, but not delivering for the people, but delivering for their, corporate owners, sponsors, whatever you want to call it.
So Daisy, do you want to get into this?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great transition.
Segue into that, right?
It is.
You
It
really
really
set
is.
that up nicely.
It really is. It really is quite a transition. Yeah.
No, but you know what? Like so getting into this whole thing, it's this topic, which I honestly was really surprised that you guys have not heard more about, this great reset that is being talked about.
I haven't even heard it in those terms. I've heard it. I've heard
the
basic idea of Davos World Economic Forum and one world government is basically, I've heard it as a concept. But on those terms.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, that it's like so baffling to me, because everything that I'm going to share with you guys is all mainstream. It's not like little conspiracy theory websites or anything,
But when we talk, you're talking Daisy's mainstream. Like, what is it?
No, mainstream, like Forbes, Times, like.
Okay.
Mainstream.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
Well, we don't read that. We don't read that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be reading those. Yeah.
No, but okay. So, but here's the thing, that it's like, if it's being talked about in places like Forbes and Times, then it should be talked about on MSNBC and all of these networks, CNN. They also should be talking about this stuff, because it's stuff that their mainstream propaganda rags, they all cover that. So why aren't you covering it as well? So that's what I'm saying, that it's like it should be more out there. And that's kind of crazy to me that it's not. But it goes to show how the narrative spin, and I feel like that's all we ever talk about, really, is just constantly this narrative spin from the media. That obviously this has been the game for decades, right? We have manufacturing consent that talked about this. When was that written? In the 70s or something? Like, this has been talked about for a long time. We already know about Project Mockingbird, right? About the CIA and all these people infiltrating into our media. So we know that the narratives are spun, right? There's no questioning that, right?
But what you're saying is, I'll say this real quick.
Yeah.
If they're only currently talking about this in Forbes and New York Times and so forth, that fits in perfectly well, because what they're trying to do is they're first trying to convince, the elites, the people, the intellectuals that are going to be further helping to spin this narrative before they,
Yes.
so they have their their buy-in before they spin it out on CNN and MSNBC.
Right.
In the soap opera.
You're right. I didn't even think about that. You're right.
In the soap opera way. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. It's that's just so maddening because it's so like diabolical, you know, like I don't notice how for me, I didn't even think of that because I don't think that way. I don't think like, oh, let me be this conniving little person and contrive all these things. It's so crazy.
Now, I do want to say up front, like, I don't necessarily believe this, but if I did, everything I'm seeing happening now with the obvious propaganda being used to paint Trump as Hitler so that then you can do anything at all. And the Dems able to get away with rigging primaries and doing all this stuff, and the CNN, MSNBC being, and most of the mass media just being obvious propaganda of the deep state or whoever pushing the same narrative. It all ties in exactly with this theory. I see it just more as a authoritarian push in the United States. I don't see human beings being smart enough and coordinated enough to pull it off at a global level, but I'm not saying that they wouldn't try if some of them are getting
and you know what, I totally hope that what you are thinking is exactly that, but what I'm going to show you is not my words, it's not my interpretation, it's literally what they are saying. It's their words of what they want to do. And when I say they, I mean the World Economic Forum, like the places that I'm taking this information from. It's their words. It's what they're saying they want to do. But okay, so what prompted this for me wanting to talk about this is, I mean, I've wanted to talk about this for a while, and I've obviously talked about certain aspects of this in Legislative Week in Review and, you know, like certain things, but, you know, this kind of, I mean, it's getting so blatant now that I feel like we have to talk about it. Okay. And for me, I haven't really been into everything that's going on with the election, because to me, this is all a ruse. This is
theater
all the sleight of hand, you know, this is the magician's trick to keep you busy talking about, oh my God, who's going to be the next president? Even though, like I said, at the beginning, the Electoral College doesn't vote on this until December. So nothing is decided. The election is not decided by the popular vote. That is a ruse. It's a show that they are putting on for people to keep them distracted about what's going on. Meanwhile, you have all of these states now that are either doing mask mandates or they're locking down. Here in Massachusetts, for some reason, we have this ridiculous curfew from 10 to 5, when in Massachusetts, nothing is open past midnight. Okay, so what are you really doing? And ever since this COVID thing, no one's really going out or anything. So all you're really doing is that now these businesses that are open, now they have to close even earlier. And so it hurts their business even more. That's all you're doing. That's all they're doing here.
And you're also, again, showing government authority. You're showing that we can make you do this.
Right. You know? In Australia, and people want to say that none of this stuff is real. In Australia, they have gone over 100 days of lockdown. Okay, where they have checkpoints for people, where they have really harsh curfews. I mean, like to the point where, you know, people are saying that in China, it's only in China that they're having these draconian measures. No, that's also going down in Australia. In the UK now, they're also locking down. In Belgium, in all these countries in Europe now, they're also going on another lockdown. Okay, meanwhile, the numbers, and I'm not going to talk about any of that kind of stuff. I'm literally just going to talk about the measures that are being taken. I'm not going to talk about the validity of anything. I'm just going to talk about the measures, okay? All right.
Well, I'm just thinking we've been babbling for a bit. We might have to give the 1,000-point view of what the reset is, or what.
Well, there is that video from the WEF, right?
Yeah, the thing is that, I mean, I can't, like, you know, we can't cover every single, there's like so much information. There's really nothing to talk about the whole thing. But in this information that I'm going to read, it talks about the Great Reset. I don't want to put what my feelings are about it. I just want to read what it says there. Okay.
Well, you're certainly talking about, you know, more globalist control of the world.
It is going to be, it is like a push for a one government type of world,
And
where you do have governments, obviously, but
yeah.
but they all, under the United Nations, they all kind of have to uh, together, they have to rule.
I would argue that
and the
world
fear
government
is,
is a good thing. I mean, you need to
well,
have kind of
Okay, but
coordination.
so that's exactly
can
what I
I
was going
get
to
into
say
this
is,
first so
Okay.
well,
that we can
Yeah,
talk
just say
about
sure,
it?
absolutely.
Jesus Christ!
let me just say real fast. The worry is that it's not going to be like a cooperative world government, as Steve and I would agree that could be a great thing if all of a sudden, like, hey, let's stop having wars and let's all help each other and things. It would be an incredible authoritarian environment.
Well, I would say you could argue that sovereignty equals racism, basically. Just like people say Zionism equals racism, I think you can make the argument that sovereignty equals racism, because basically you're saying that you can trample on other people's rights for the benefit of your sovereign nation. So I just think how do you move beyond that? And I think the answer is some kind of, you have to have some kind of global cooperation at a global level,
And
if
again,
not global government.
The worry is that the direction things seem to be moving, as I say, just in a petri dish here in the United States, as well as worldwide, toward much more authoritarian slant rather than a cooperative, world peace
Right.
situation. Yeah.
Right.
So this was prompted by this. I mean, me sharing with this this with you guys was kind of prompted by this article that was written by Colin Todd-Hunter on offguardian.org. And it says, "Own nothing and be happy, the Great Reset's vision for the future. World Economic Forum's video tells us about the plans for humanity in the year 2030. So this video that he's talking about, this thing, is actually from 2016. This is not something that's new. This is something that they've been talking about for quite some time. And there are some people that would even say that they've been doing this even since before 9/11, okay? And so what he talks about is how Klaus Schwab, which is the CEO of the World Economic Forum, he says that the main driving force for this dystopian Great Reset is a tectonic shift that intends to change how we live, work, and interact with each other. Okay, and it's under the guise of COVID-19. And again, this is not me. I'm going to show you how they talk about this. Okay. And he's in here, he says, in a short video showcase on social media, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. This video has been scrubbed from Twitter. But you can still find it online. I'm not going to play it because obviously we can't play stuff on here, but I will put the link for it if people want. All right, so this, like I said, this is from the World Economic Forum. This is November 2016 is when they wrote about this. And they wrote this article, and this is kind of what you were asking about yesterday, Steve, this whole 2030, that again, this is a plan that has been talked about for, in these World Economic Forums and all these like games that they play. They've talked about transitioning the world to I mean, I think of it more as a controlled type of world, but it's not how it's presented. So it says, welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and life has never been better. That's their way of looking at it.
And of course, you own nothing means somebody else owns everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's essentially that this government or whatever, they would be the proprietors of everything, and you would essentially be loaned out, or you know what I'm saying, like you're granted things.
But that's the reality. That's the reality for most people already. Like most people are in debt up to their eyeballs, and they owe in their house. If they have a house, they owe rent, or they owe their apartment. Like or their car or whatever. They don't actually own things except maybe some personal possessions. But the reality is that most people are debt slaves, and that's that system has been encouraged for decades. And so this is just a natural. It seems like this would be the natural progression. Just to kind of make it official, but the reality is that most people don't own very much, right? I mean,
in reality, no one owns really anything, because even your like land, like people that think that they have land, the government can come in and take your land too. So
Well, yeah, but I mean, in a legal sense, people, there's a differentiation between, owing on a credit card and actually not owing on that. So yeah, you're right. Ultimately, the government can take your land through eminent domain or whatever, but that's always
Sure.
been the case. So there's a continuum, but I think there is. Most people don't own very much, and they're basically in debt, right? And you're encouraged, obviously, to consume, and and you end up really not having not really owning anything. So this seems like this is just a natural progression of that. I would just say that. So this is nothing new as far as I'm concerned.
That very interesting point. That is the reality for a lot of people right now, in a different political environment than what this might ultimately be talking about, though.
Right.
yeah. All right. So then what this story does is that it gives you essentially like they predict what it would be like in 2030, and just talking about how, yeah, essentially that everything is monitored and controlled, right? Because your money, everybody is on a UBI, right? And so everything is on a digital dollar. So obviously, any transactions that are done, everything is all monitored, right, by these government agencies, or whoever it is that is dispensing whatever it is that's going to be dispensed to us. Yeah, and I mean, I understand what you're saying, Steve, that this is like the natural progression in your view, but I just don't think that we need to go along with it. Like I
Oh,
personally,
I'm not. I'm not
I don't
implying
want to
that
go
we need.
along with it. I'm
I'm not
sorry.
implying that we need to go along with it. I'm just saying that this is nothing. It's nothing new in terms of people not really owning
Yeah.
most things. People are in debt.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
to
yeah.
me,
But I
it's
mean, that's just how they're saying it there. That that they're trying to sell it to you, like, oh, you're gonna own nothing and you'll be happy.
and to me, it's a difference of the whole difference of the thing is the politics of the thing and the degree of the authoritarianism present at the time. If it basically is that way, that literally we're in some kind of communist utopian situation where you don't need money, you get what you want, or a digital dollar, you get what you need, everyone has a roof over their head, but also the government isn't oppressing you. The government, you still have some kind of ability to make decisions in your life and about your government, and that it's all about that, right? And I think what we're talking about is this is trying to treat us the way we think of people being treated in China, that the government keeps tabs on every person, everything. They can't do anything, and they have no vote in their society of any that means anything. That's the difference, right? It could be, having everything you need and not owning anything. It could be utopian or could be dystopian, depending on the form of government at the time.
Right. I mean, you could have a Stalinist system where there's actual planned starvation of like Ukraine in the 30s. Where hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people were starved to death. As kind of an economic retribution policy. Or you can have a system where people are actually well intentioned or whatever, and there's so I mean there is. That's the question. But to me, it seems like this is kind of a post-capitalist strategy, that they're realizing that, okay, capitalism has reached the end of the road, that the environmental devastation, wrought by pursuit of wealth for yourself, and that's coming to an end. Well, I'm just saying that this is what it seems to me. So this
I
might.
see it more. I see it more that technology is making governments realize they're going to be able to completely control people pretty soon.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
you will be able to have like mini flocks of birds that are really killer drones that eliminate anyone that's any kind of problem at all.
Right. So that's not
Yeah.
capitalist. Capitalist is a free market, where
Right.
people can pursue their own self-interest. So I mean, basically, it's countering that. I don't
No.
think you can argue with that.
No. No, I'm just talking about what direction the authoritarianism that I see in our current government that's come out with the censorship
Okay.
and so forth lately, that's heading in this direction of the Great Reset that Daisy's talking about.
Right. Okay. So again, the World Economic Forum. This is not Daisy's Economic Forum.
Daisy's Economic Forum.
Okay. Now is the time for a great reset. Again, not me saying
Yeah.
this,
Right.
them saying this, okay? And again, I will post the links to all this stuff. You can look at, like, literally, Klaus Schwab, he has a podcast where they talk about this, and he has a book that he came out with talking about how COVID needs to be the thing that we use for the Great Reset. So it says COVID-19 lockdowns may be gradually easing, but anxiety about the world's social and economic prospects is only intensifying. This is good reason to worry. A sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. But while this outcome is likely, it is not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education and social contracts and working conditions. Okay? Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. And so it says, in short, we need a great reset of capitalism, not, not post-capitalism. This is a great reset of capitalism. All right. And then it talks about like why we should do it, but I wanted to kind of look into this stuff because he does, obviously he mentions COVID-19 a lot here.
Yeah, if I was writing a sci-fi movie, I would basically have this current situation. Biden would become president. There'd be this huge crackdown via COVID-19. Everyone gets locked down for 6 months or something, and then one worker would come somehow escape from China and basically say that Bill Gates helped to release COVID-19, and this is all a result of the pre-planning that happened back 10 years ago
Yeah.
on how to use such an emergency event to make just such a thing happen.
I mean, I know that this is supposed to be like so extraordinary that it wouldn't really happen, but I'm literally reading to
No,
you what, you know what I'm saying? Like this stuff is happening. They're talking about these things, but it's just not disseminated to the majority of people in
right.
CNN or MSNBC, like through these, organizations. This type of media doesn't talk about this, and so it seems as though it's something that's so far fetched. It's like there's no way that they would do anything like that until it's right at your door, and then they present it to you as, well, what else are you going to do?
Right.
All right, so then it says the Great Reset agenda would have three main components. The first would steer the market toward fair outcomes. To this end, governments should improve coordination, for example, in tax, regulatory, and fiscal policy, upgrade trade arrangements, and create the conditions for a stakeholder economy. At a time of diminishing tax bases and soaring public debt, governments have a powerful incentive to pursue such action. And then it says the second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals, such as equity and sustainability. And those are the words that are constant. If you actually listen to these meetings that they have, they're always pushing sustainability, equity, and it's always like those two words that are.
So Daisy, to add to this idea, all right, if you had a not so bright new potential VP, Kamala Harris, and she were taken into a meeting and introduced these concepts, well, she just might let spill with this bizarre speech about equity of outcomes, right? That she just recently did. That was this completely like Marxist kind of, that was like, what was that? Where'd that come from? From her? She had never said anything like that before.
Okay, wait a second. What's wrong with equality and sustainability on their face?
Well, equity of outcomes is specifically what Harris said that people.
Yeah, but I mean, shouldn't you share the wealth? Why should the wealth be all concentrated on the top?
Well, typically what you talk about is right. So if you're actually supporting a capitalist system, you would say equity of opportunity, right? Not equity of outcome.
Yeah, but that's bullshit. That's like access to healthcare. I think people should be rewarded for, like, Jeff Bezos should be rewarded, but he shouldn't be able to keep all his wealth. It should be distributed so society as a whole benefits. I definitely would support that.
Well, I think we're just talking a different interpretation here, Steve, right? So equity of outcome to me means everybody owns the same little shitty Peugeot car, no matter what no matter what, you live in the same apartment, you live in the same, you get the same car, you get the same whatever. That's
I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means, in this, it's just one sentence there saying equality and sustainability. So I don't know what that.
Oh, no. So, okay. So the reason
Yeah.
that I brought that up is because I have noticed, okay, that when I watch these meetings, because I've actually watched the meetings for these economic forums and stuff, and I'll read stuff, and then I'll listen to these politicians, and it's like they all have the same talking points, and to me, when you all start to sound the same, it's because that is you're trained to sell things in a certain way. And
sure.
Using words like equity and sustainability, those are key words, they're trigger words that people want to hear, because you hear that and you think, oh, this person's a good person, or you think those two words, oh, this must be a good thing. So your way of actually looking and hearing the rest of the message is kind of muffled, because you think, oh, but this is all about equity and sustainability, or equality and sustainability. So this has to be a good thing. So I can just put all of my reasoning to the side and just think that this is all right because those two words are in there. That's how you sell things to people. And so that's why I said the thing about those two words. I'm not
okay.
I'm
not putting aside everything. I'm not shutting down my critical mind just because I hear those words. But I think sustainability and equality are good things. I mean, because if they were talking about inequality and unsustainability, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you must be, you're because you're against that, you're good. I'm going to support you. I mean, I support equality and sustainability. I think those are good things. I think we need to have a sustainability. We don't have sustainability in the current situation.
Yeah, I have no problem with those words at all. I love sustainability and equal equitable opportunity. I'm all for, but it was particular. I'm just kind of making light of the fact that Kamala kind of out of the blue came up with that whole thing about equitable outcomes, which was bizarre even to me, and I'm not usually taken to that kind of.
I mean, she's not about equitable outcomes. Look at
not at all, right?
the Mnuchin deal or whatever. It's not equitable outcomes. Or look about the incarceration of parents of truant children in California. I mean, that's not equitable outcomes.
Right, but,
so,
unless you apply a class.
Let's look at how like Kamala Harris. Sorry. So let's look at how Kamala Harris, right, she is actually considered a progressive. She is supposedly, besides Bernie Sanders, the most progressive. Listen,
I don't
I'm telling
think so.
you what she is considered. She is literally, that's what they call her, the most progressive senator.
Who calls her that?
Bernie
because she's
Sanders.
not, even compared to Elizabeth Warren, she's not progressive.
And so that's, but because she has the language, right? Because she has the language, that is what people take as, oh, she has to be a progressive because she has the language. And that is why I brought up those words.
Well, it's also she's flip-flopped on everything, right? So it's all about at what point did you make that judgment that she's the most progressive? She flipped on absolutely everything. She was like a huge pushing Medicare for all, and then when she had to basically say no, we need to protect the ACA, she flipped to that.
So Daisy, am I correct in saying this is kind of you're saying this is kind of an Orwellian newspeak? That they use these words to kind of cloak what their real agenda is. Right.
Well, I think honestly, so you want to know what my interpretation of this is? Because my interpretation of this is that the agenda is that they see that this is the best way for everyone in the world to move forward, is for everyone to be plugged in and for everything to be tagged and traced, because that is how you can actually account for how many supplies you have and how many people you need to feed and all of this. It's all logistics, right? And so for them, they look at it as it's only natural that we are going to have this system set up, right? Where even like AI, the whole reason why you want to have AI is so that you have more brain power, you have more capacity, right? That is what we are doing. We're using it as a tool. And the danger of AI is that if it gets online, that it can go out of control, right? And I feel like that's how it is with this whole thing, where what they're trying to do is they're trying to address famine and climate change and all these kind of things, and they feel that this is the best way to do it. The problem is that what's going to happen is that this is going to lead to people, again, this is my interpretation, to people being even more indebted, in the sense that you will have no power for anything. And instead, what's going to happen is that companies like Amazon and like, you know, and Google and all of these companies, they're going to become even more massive because they're going to be at the hub. They're going to be the ones that are creating this system. And so that is my issue, is that these already powerful companies are going to become even more powerful. We have the proof in the pudding with what happened during this whole pandemic, right? That you had all of these small companies couldn't open, they couldn't do anything. There was only a handful of companies that were allowed to stay open and were allowed to continue to make money, while other people either lose their business or they lose their job or whatever it may be, right? And it's only these companies that they're not really seeing any losses right now. Hello, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jeff Bezos just added another like $30 billion to his little sack, you know? Like,
Oh,
I mean,
if I go and stand out with, you know, I stand out and have a beer with my buddy on his driveway in his garage or like that, we will see an Amazon truck while we're standing there having one beer. There's no doubt about it.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
and we've talked about already how these businesses, like even the malls, right? You have all of these major stores like Old Navy, that they're not able to pay their rent. Okay,
Right.
and so what you're having is that like Simon malls, they're having to buy these stores in order to be able to in order so that these companies don't go bankrupt, because if they go bankrupt, they don't get any money. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like what's happening is that everything is becoming more centralized. All the power, all the money, everything is becoming more centralized. And this is accelerating that. But it's being sold to you as this is the best thing forward, and this is for your best benefit. That
Right.
is
I share your concern, Daisy, about this concentration of power and the concentrate. You know, you see this agglomeration of these corporate entities like Amazon and everything taking over, and I'm concerned about it. And it seems like, you know, a lot of it's going in a negative direction. I see the World Economic Forum. I see some of their things as having very troubling implications, but some of the things I see not necessarily as being negative, at least on their face. What do you suggest is you know, what? Okay, so we're all victims of this system. And it's getting worse and worse, and it's been getting worse for decades now. What do we do to counteract this? I mean, we try to work on a Tulsi campaign that goes nowhere. Like, what are we going to do to like change the system? What do you suggest? What's sustainable going forward? Because, you know, we have all these problems. What's the alternative?
I just want to add one flavor to it. To me, the big problem here is that as you set up these systems of you know, more control, it's going to become more dangerous as technology evolves. You're going to get to the point where somebody simply could get elected president, and they could appoint themselves dictator because they control so many. They essentially control so many systems of killer drones.
But I mean, how do we fight? Yeah. How do we fight this system? Besides, like, okay, we can educate people about it, and we can encourage other people. But I mean, you know, the reality is most people are just totally unaware of this. I mean, you know, Jim and I didn't even know about this great reset.
Which is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So now you've doubled your. You know, you got 3 people now who are aware of it. But like in terms of like changing the system, like. And, you know, let's say we got the word out and all of a sudden everyone becomes aware of it. How is it really going to change things? We're still going to have like all these problems around the world. Like how, you know, what's the solution for, you know, for overpopulation, for hunger, for all these, you know, issues, for debt, for wealth inequality? What are the answers for all these problems that we're going to, I mean, how are you going to counteract these efforts?
How am I going to counteract?
No, how are we?
Like,
how are we,
the global
the enlightened few, going to counteract this evil, nefarious, you know,
I mean,
conspiracy, which is what it is, right?
It starts with exactly what we're doing now, right? And I'm very much the type of person that, you know, like I believe in voting with your dollar, right? With what what you do with your life, how you are in your life is what's going to bring about the greatest change. That's what I think, right? And so, like, for instance, you know, if like I believe that we all need to start checking out. We need to like, for instance, I don't buy Amazon. If I see anything Amazon, I make sure not to. And you know what? I'm sure they don't miss my money because he makes so much fucking money, it doesn't even matter. But that's how I am making a difference. And if more people like me were to stop just going along to get along and being like, well, I mean, what other option is there? Might as well just get on the train. Well, if more people were to stop doing that and actually doing the opposite, then I think there would be more traction. But as long as, first of all, as people don't know what's going on, then of course this is like nothing is going to change. And it's not that I'm expecting for this one thing to come out and that's it, like everyone in the world changes, you know. But I also don't think that like me personally, again, I do things. I don't just talk about things. And for me, this is me doing something. You know what I'm saying? Like this is, even if it's just one other person, like, okay, so now you guys are talking about this. Hopefully you guys will have conversations with people. And who knows, maybe this is like a ripple effect, you know?
Right. I mean, I agree
that's how I see
you know, and I mentioned that article from Red Flag, like at our last session, you know, about how elections don't really change things. It's always been social movement, social unrest that's resulted in change, you know. And so ultimately, it comes down to economics, you know. And you look at the Montgomery bus boycott. I mean, that really had an effect because it wasn't through the ballot box; it was through economic action boycott. People made a decision where to spend their dollars, right, and that had an influence. So ultimately, it comes down to that. And I agree with you. I mean, that's really a potent a tool for change, you know. But still, I mean, it begs a question of what are you going to replace this with? So, like AI seems like it's inevitable, right? And AI is just becoming so prevalent and powerful that how are we going to counteract that? Are we going to, you know, are we going to vote in somebody who's going to like ban AI, and is that going to work? I mean, I just don't
but
see.
It's not. But you see, it's not about, okay. So like banning AI, right? So it's like even Elon Musk, who is literally working on this kind of stuff, even he has talked about the dangers of AI and how we need to have legislation out there that controls how much we are allowed to do with AI. And I think that we should be expecting that our legislatures are fucking educated enough in what's going on, in what their own military is working on in DARPA and all these places, okay? They should be educated enough to make sure that we do have laws. Look at all this shit that's going on with the internet and all this censorship, and it's been done under the guise of, oh, but they're private companies, blah, 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 they can do whatever they want. And it's really because of the fact that our legislation hasn't caught up to our internet law.
So you're looking, right? But it's essentially you're looking for more authority through legislation to control it. So there's authoritarianism, right? I mean, doesn't it come down to people have to change their consciousness? Like people have to be have to get away from this idea that we have to exploit other people and control other people. I mean, going back to, you know, the Phoenix program in Vietnam, it was like this us versus them mentality. I mean, we have to, if we never get beyond that mentality, we can have all those legislation we want, and it's not going to solve our problems.
What does that have to do with AI? We do need to legislate AI because these companies, they can't just do whatever the fuck they want.
Because first of all, government is controlled by corporate interests. So like, it's not going to be like to think that government's going to control corporations is naive. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I don't think
so then we shouldn't have any sort of legislation then.
Well, I mean,
that's what you're arguing.
It's not going to be effective. I mean,
just put some context around it. Like, computer scientists have for decades advocated for things like if you're doing experiments around AI, it's not connected up to the internet in any way, so you couldn't have that instant God effect of suddenly it can absorb all knowledge and actually have interconnections to the world and do things. You know, I'm in computers, and I basically feel like you can't stop it, because like if I retired, I could as a hobby take up trying to develop AI. Basically, the idea of a self-learning program is kind of a fascinating.
I mean, Google hired Ray Kurzweil. You know, Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the what's it called? The I can't remember, the point where AI becomes
a God machine, or
the singularity. It's called the singularity.
Oh, the singularity. Okay.
And the singularity is when AI becomes able to program on its own, and then all bets are off. And he wrote a book called the Singularity back in like the 90s, whatever. And he was recently hired by, you know, Eric Schmidt, now of Google. But Kurzweil's now, and it's like he's in his 80s, whatever, but I guess he's still working for Google. But he predicted that this would happen in the early 2020s, that AI would reach this point of.
So you're pointing about it being able to like program and therefore like reprogram itself, like improve itself.
Yeah, I mean, his book, I read his book quite a while ago, but he talked about three different aspects. One was the medical aspect, that you're going to have these, bots that will be able to go into your brain or into your bloodstream and be able to repair tissue and do all these things. I mean, potentially there's always a good side and a bad side, right? So the good side is that, there could be all these great benefits of this technology, right? But the other side, of course, is that the technology itself could become evil, when it becomes it could become a threat.
But the technology itself wouldn't. Intrinsically, why would it become evil? Becoming evil, that's anthropomorphizing it. It would have to be that whoever programmed it, they put something in there that would call for that evil. The evil wouldn't just come upon itself.
The AI can program itself, and it has self-awareness and decides that it wants to perpetuate itself, and it sees the human species as a threat. Then it might take measures on its own. It sounds like science fiction, but it's
that's anthropomorphizing it.
Yeah, because it's not anthropomorphizing.
Well, no.
But you would,
Daisy. It could. I mean, there are a lot of cases where if something is an expensive, item, people would say you should protect yourself from harm. And the thought is always that, or somehow there's a embedded programming about improving upon what getting better. And at some point that we might just be in the way. It might not even be an evil intent. It's simply that, it getting better means doing something where
getting rid of us.
Yeah, because we're taking
but
resources.
That's not being evil.
It's not evil.
It's
not
eyes
evil.
Because it's against us, but it's not being evil. It's literally just the programming. It's just doing what it thinks.
Well, neoliberal imperialism is not evil, from our point of view necessarily, because we're benefiting. Neoliberal or neoconservative imperialism is not evil from our point of view necessarily, because
it is from my point of view.
Well, it is, but like for a lot of people, we're benefiting. We get cheap goods from around the world, cheap labor and cheap materials because of that system. But if you're a victim of that system, it is evil, right?
But that's also the reason why, if you say anything against the United States, then you are, or against imperialism, then it's that you hate this country, right? And that you hate the United States, and that's not necessarily what that means. If anything, you are more of a patriot if you are someone who calls out the indiscretions of your country.
Right, but I'm a world global patriot. I'm not a national patriot. I think that in that system of national government.
I'm not calling you a patriot. I'm just saying.
Or humanist.
All right. Anyways. So then the third and final priority of a great reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution, which is what we've been talking about, to support the public good, especially by addressing health and social challenges. During the COVID-19 crisis, companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establish testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector. So, and this is a picture showing all the different aspects of life that would change. This is what they have imagined, okay, that would change under the Great Reset. This is what they would like. And I'm pretty sure, literally everything is on here. I don't even know what wouldn't be on here. So then on Time magazine, and this was like the big thing, that this was like, I was like, whoa, I can't believe that this, that they actually did this. They actually had, this was the original cover of the Time magazine. And again, it says The Great Reset. So not me making this shit up, right? By Klaus Schwab. And it's literally them putting together a planet.
Was this also in 2016? I'm looking for a date.
No, this was this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it was either this month or last month.
Yeah.
That they put this out. And then it's like, you see all the different people here, putting together the country or the globe, right? And, here it talks about all the people. And again, it's always talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. He always brings it back to the pandemic and how we need to use this as the catapult, right? To be able to do this. And then this is another piece that the Time put out, right? That it's like also the other piece on the Forbes that was about how it would be in 2030. This one talks about how it would be in 2023. So it's 2023. Here's how we fix the global economy. And it talks about the US began to change its approach after November 3rd, 2020, when Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the presidential election and the Democrats held the majority in both houses of Congress, which that's not true, but and then it says, following his inauguration in January 2021, President Biden moved quickly to rebuild frayed ties between America and Europe, setting up a forum to share collective intelligence that could inform a smarter form of government. European governments were eager to learn from the investment strategies used by the US government, like those led by the Defense Research Agency, DARPA, to spur research and development in high-risk technologies. And the US was eager to learn from Europe how to create sustainable cities and reinvigorate civic participation. And then it talks about here, on February 11, 2021, the FDA approved the most promising COVID-19 vaccine for manufacture in the US mass production began immediately. Plans for swift global distribution kicked in, and the first citizens received their shots within 3 weeks, free at the point of use. It was the fastest development and manufacture of a vaccine on record and a monumental success in health innovation. So, you know that I've been talking to you guys a lot about how, especially on the debates and stuff like that, that they kept pushing the vaccine. And the fact that we obviously have Operation Warp Speed, which we've been talking about now for how long, okay? This is how the military is going to distribute. Again, not my words. This is Trump and all these people and they're actually, 60 Minutes actually did a story on Warp Speed. So if you want to go and check it out, you can check it out, how they are pushing for this to happen early next year. They want to start with this, okay? And eventually it will get to the point where you will not be able to participate in the world without this vaccination to prove that you are clear. And so that was my whole tie-in for this whole thing that went on for like ever, because we just went off in tangents.
Yeah, interesting, bizarre. Yeah, and who knows what could happen. It could be that, and it appears it's a well orchestrated, designed thing to happen. To me, this kind of a thing could happen by accident, just because of, as they stumble in the direction of trying to solve problems and they implement technology. Essentially, it's going to be too tempting for somebody to use the technology to control the populations, and we're just going to get to the point where I don't know how things can not get very bad with the advancement of technology and the ability to control masses, threaten them all easily. And so I think that the best chances for human societies are either beneficent aliens that come down, or if we all become Amish and we relinquish all but basic technology. Yeah. We need all to convert to being Amish.
Well, if you talk to Mike Gravel, he definitely thinks the aliens are involved. And
he does. Yeah, he's had that. Yeah.
I don't. I'm open to anything as long as you provide some support for it. And he actually has.
If we're like wrapping this up, I don't want to tie this in with aliens, because this is not some conspiracy theory.
No. I'm just talking.
They're putting out these plans. And things are coming across, and I don't want to conflate the two, because I don't want it to come off as this is like some sort of. I'm not taking this as a joke. I mean, you guys might take it as a joke, but I don't take it as a joke.
I don't take it as a joke.
It's really serious, and I don't know.
My last statement was that I would see it. Even if it wasn't being done by design, I see that as being the natural direction, because of the push for globalism anyway, and because of the the ability that technology is going to give for anyone to become a dictator, anyone that happens to come into power at the right time, is going to suddenly have control over all, all their population, and they won't be able to complain because they, like I say, they have a flock of killer drones that can eliminate anybody that's a problem, and they're going to have
well, they won't even need to do that, because like with the whole thing as in China that's already going on, that they have the social credit score where you cannot exist in the world,
all these things,
unless you have the score enough to do whatever it is. And
it's
who
all
determines that score? The Chinese government.
But it's all tied in. It's all of possible because of technology. It allows them to keep track of people, and it's all tied together in my thinking, Yeah.
So it seems to me there's kind of a convergence going on, between, like, it seems like other governments are almost jealous of the ability of the Chinese government to monitor and, may have that level of control, and like, how are they so successful? I mean, it started with, the one child policy. Remember that, in the 80s, whatever, that they were able to enforce that, and people, acquiesced to that system. And I mean, you can argue either way whether it was good or bad, because it did, they don't have starvation in China like they do in India or whatever. I mean, they were able to create some stability, but on the other hand, you had these extremely oppressive measures, late-term abortions, forced late-term abortions, and everything. So I mean, you can make the argument, but it seems like there is kind of like a recognition that the Chinese are at the forefront of AI and this system, and we're almost, other governments are jealous, or other institutions are jealous of this ability to do this.
And how do they not take action or call out the big tech companies that are assisting China in these policies? Basically, you've got Zuckerberg and and Bezos and all these people helping them do this shit, and our government loves these big tech people rather than feeling they should crack down on them or
the thing is that they also work with these companies. Like Google has massive Pentagon contracts, like they're all, even Elon Musk. Elon Musk is now part of he's a defense contractor, because now he can deliver like missiles or whatever in less than 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So I mean, maybe the ultimate thing is kind of like, we'll work together with the Chinese. Like, let's collaborate on this, because
well, if nothing else, the Pentagon probably
literally that is what I thought we just talked about this. That's what's going to happen.
But
even if governments are going to work together.
even if not that, I can see how the Pentagon likes the fact that Amazon and Zuckerberg and everything, they get to do this development on the Chinese dollar that then will benefit the Pentagon. If they want to use some kind of limited aspects of this to be able to spy on Americans or whatever like that, they'll have benefited from the development that happened for the Chinese, So maybe we don't want the full abilities that that the big tech allow China to have, but we will someday, or we want a part of it or something,
Okay. Now, I did read that article you sent, Daisy, the one you sent offline, the one by Martin Armstrong, or that Martin Armstrong student. I thought that was interesting. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but what I thought was the way it was presented is that it's almost like the threat is authoritarianism in any form versus kind of a libertarianism, ideal, that this extreme system of a World Economic Forum and Nazism is equated with communism, because communism was explicitly mentioned in that article as being something we want to avoid. And it just seems to me like that's not the real conflict. Conflict is between injustice and oppression and justice, and it seems like there was the mention made of the fact that Klaus, what's his name, was born in 1938 or whatever, and under Hitler. I mean, first of all, that's meaningless, because he was, he had no decision to be born under in 1938, and it's not, he was 7 years old when the war ended, and a lot of other people who were progressive activists, who were born at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be associated with a Nazi regime just because they were born during it. But I just thought, like, what is this? Like, it seems like it's kind of like this, and also this guy too. I mean, this guy Martin Armstrong has this kind of crazy theory of, like, it's pi multiplied times 1,000 years is 3,000 something days, which equals 8 something years, and that means the economic cycles repeat every 8 years. And like, I mean, it's to me that's kind of out there.
Yeah.
And so
I just sent you that link because they had the video. That's the only reason why.
Okay, because the article itself was like,
the people who are economists that are talking about this stuff, like I said, I don't subscribe to Armstrong economics or whatever. I just saw that was the first link that came up that it wasn't YouTube, so I was like, okay, let me just send them.
Well, it seems to me like this whole, like, Tulsi was onto something when she was looking at like trying to unite left and right, and that the extremes, sometimes they're the ones who really kind of get it. They may not get the whole picture, but sometimes these, the right extreme and the left extreme and the libertarians and the extreme communists on one side, and you have they're not part of this duopoly, and they kind of see beyond that. And it seems to me like that's what we're talking about here. And to some extent, like this World Economic Forum, like what are they part of? Are they part of the duopoly? Are they more extreme or what? And where do they fit in?
I would say that's extreme.
Okay.
I would say their views are extreme.
Okay. And how successful are they going to be in implementing this? Because
they're literally in charge of the world. Like all of these global economies, they're in charge of all that. So I'm pretty sure that they're going to be pretty successful.
Well, I don't know, because like you look at the Phoenix program. I was looking at the book by what's his name, Douglas Valentine, that was mentioned by what's her name in our podcast, Whitney Webb. They talked about this. In Vietnam, they had this Phoenix program, and actually, my former congressman from Connecticut, Simmons, was part of this program, and they went around basically and they assassinated people everywhere, like 50,000 people, and they tortured people, and they did all these terrible things, and it was failure. Obviously the war didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. So a lot of times these are bungling attempts to like influence things with these grand ideas and everything. Just like, any grand idea, when you try to implement it, inevitably it's going to backfire on some level. And it's just, this World Economic Forum plan, like, well, it sounds like they're going to do all these things and they're going to be in control, but is it really going to work? And is, like, why are we even talking about it if we didn't think there was a chance that it's not going to work, that we're going to be able to resist it, right? Be no point talking about it.
The reason that I want to talk about this is not so much that I think that there's a chance that we can stop it. It's more so that I think that people should know what they're being indoctrinated into. I don't think that people should just be led blindly to believe that their government is altruistically doing all this shit for them, when in actuality, it's not. It's these companies that are set to become all powerful, okay? And the biggest companies out there. And you're gonna think that that they are, not you specifically, but people are going to think that these companies are just doing this just to benefit you, when in actuality it's not.
People don't care. People like the convenience of like clicking on a thing and do the one click ordering from Amazon. They don't think about it, and like, I go down to the mailroom of my apartment.
So because those people don't care, I shouldn't talk about it? Is that what you're...
Well, no, I'm saying it seems like it's it's a Herculean task. Because I'm just saying the awareness is like, we're a few people here and there's a few people around. And I argue that if it's a worthwhile cause, you should pursue it no matter what, even if it seems like it's impossible. But I'm just saying the reality is that most people, they don't feel like they're being oppressed. It's like happy, friendly fascism or something. They feel like, I'm okay. I come home, I get to watch my Netflix and drink my beer or whatever, and I'm not going to worry about it. And unfortunately, that's the reality. That people are complacent. How are you going to get people riled up unless they feel like they're losing something?
All I can do is just put out the information. If people want to know the information, then I can hopefully assist with that. If they're not open to it, then there's nothing I can do.
I see when there's a crisis, after this winter, and people lose their jobs, that get kicked out of their apartments, then there's going to be a potential mass movement. And my question would be, how do you channel that energy into something positive, or is it impossible?
Obviously, it's impossible. So,
is it? I mean,
That's what you're saying. It's impossible. So
no, I mean, I'm just saying we should. To me, that's going to be more effective in trying to enact change. I mean, it's important to talk about it, but it seems to me like action is going to actual like economic action, boycotts.
But if people don't
and
know about
strikes.
what's going on, then how are we supposed to act?
Well, because if people lose their jobs and they don't have anything, then they're gonna act because they have nothing.
How
to
do you know
lose.
that?
Because that's what history has shown us. So when people lose everything, they're not just going to sit back and take it. I mean, they're going to like some people are going to stand up and say like this is not acceptable, and they're
That
going
is that is a good point to me too. Is that when you essentially, if you do another like 6 month law, I guess they're talking like 6 week lockdown, but when you do a lockdown and people lose their job, they have time to sit around and think about this stuff.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's part of it too.
it's funny. It's actually a dangerous situation for the government to do that, to allow people to start to organize and talk to each other and complain about their situation, whereas they're just so freaking busy all the time, they don't have time to think about it. That they're not a threat.
I mean, they recognize the system is not sustainable. Hence, like, why are they rolling out this World Economic Forum, Great Reset thing? Because they obviously think the system is not sustainable, and they're worried about this kind of instability coming up in the future. The unrest and yeah, I mean, people sitting around. Yeah, you have time to think about these things. And short of just literally killing people off like they did with the Phoenix program. What are you going to do to kind of create stability? So Les raises a lot of interesting questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Please like,
Bye-bye.
share, comment, and subscribe.
Okay.